Got the mass of the clay. The mass of the clay is really already in the center. It's only the outside that we need to smooth. So I'll do that as quickly as I can. Start a little bit from the top, press down, and then press in. This way, especially with that part of the hand. This clay is a little bit dry, so it'll take a little more pressure. But you can see it taking shape. And then I use these fingers with the sponge just to get that front bottom edge. At this point, having the wheel going pretty fast is okay because you're pressing inward. The real work is being done by the left hand. The very outside edge is being pressed in with the fingers of the right hand. And it's good to go all the way to the bottom, to the wheel, so you don't have any unevenness at the bottom. So that clay is centered, you can see that. It's a little bit uneven here. So for the sake of making it easy, I'll press it in and smooth it out one more time. So you want a nice dome shape. Some people want to flatten that top. I don't do it because I want the clay to be moving inward like this so the centrifugal force doesn't force it out. So now I'll find the center. Go ahead and come in for this. So I'm also pressing this down so I keep the thickness up here. I'm going to go down and in. And then I'm going to pull out with these two fingers a little bit. I'm going to go too far at once. But I'm also holding the clay with the left hand. I don't want to pull it off center by pulling back too far. A little bit of moisture on the sponge, not too much. You want it slippery, but you don't want it wet. And you don't want it so dry that you can feel a drag on it. Some people want to put a little water on the inside, like that. It's okay, but it's not really necessary. So now I'm going to make sure that the clay is centered and I don't pull it off. So I use that motion on the outside. And I'll start going down into the mass of the clay, pulling back with those two fingers. It's a bit hard right now. And keeping this top rim thick. Okay, so I've got about that much to go. I'll do that in probably 2 steps. Just one hand, keeping the outside nice and smooth, nice and even. And down in one more time. Now is when I want to start checking to make sure that that it's not too thin on the bottom. So I'll take any kind of tool, needle tool, knife, whatever. Use that as a gauge. Put your finger all the way down to the clay. When you take it out, that tells you how much bottom you have in the clay. You want at least that much. Less than half, more than a quarter. So you can see what I'm doing right now is I'm doing the same thing I did when I centered it, while I'm using this hand and pulling back just a little bit. I'm going to go down to the very bottom. Make sure that's thick. Now another trick, if you want to call it a trick, go ahead and go in. To make sure the bottom is pretty smooth and flat, I'm using the ruler just to define the edges and to smooth the inside. And then I'll just use a sponge. So I have to go with my fingers all the way down in there with these 2 or 3 fingers and pull it back and actually form kind of a groove in there, but not a very deep one. So there's my fingers. There I am pulling back. Now I'm coming up very slowly just to make sure. This is a bigger piece of clay, so it takes a little more effort to keep it smooth. Okay, so now we saw the bottom. Now I have to put these fingers outward and upward at the same time. Very, very, very gradually. There's a little bit of a ridge on the inside. And in some cases, as they come up, some of that clay is going to come off. That's the clay that's very wet. So I'm actually getting rid of some of that. So I'll put a little more moisture on it. Okay, so now I'm pressing out with these fingers. And without doing anything else, I'm coming up very slowly. And that thins the clay. This piece weighed about 6.5 pounds. I'm looking for about a 10-inch cylinder out of it. A little bit of excess clay there. So at this point it looks a little sloppy, but you see the cylinder. Now I'm just gonna go about 2 more minutes on this to get the cylinder completed. So here's where just a little bit of water inside and outside gives you nice slipperiness. You want slippery. And as you can see, the clay comes in. I want it to continue coming in so that the force of the wheel does not spread the top too far out. Now I can go down to the very bottom again to try to get that last step, number 5. So I have to pull the inside bottom edge of the clay outward, or push it I should say, and keeping a nice firm grip on the outside. It's actually thinning it, and it's going to be where the clay goes to the top. So now I'm very slowly going to the top. I'm getting some of that excess wet clay again right there. But I do not want the clay to get really dry, so I'll probably a little bit of water each time I do this. Clay is still about that thick. So it's like repeat the same step until it's thin enough. So I'm going down to the very bottom again, putting the squeeze inside and out, coming up very slowly. When I say very slowly, that's so you don't get a ridge or a groove in there and make it too thin and tear it. Older clay does have a tendency to give you a taller cylinder, so that's good. It's a little bit drier, it's a little bit harder to work with, but you get a better cylinder. So now at this point, the cylinder is complete. It's not quite as thin as I want it. I'm going to go for about 1/4 of an inch on the finished piece. If I push it out, it'll get thinner. If I push it in, it will thicken, but I'm going to keep pulling it up. So I'll do like 2 more pulls and we'll stop. A little bit of speed is not bad at this time as long as you don't lose control. Keep the cylinder going in. I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on it because I want to move a little faster. And always keep that top smaller than the base, unless you're making a bowl. We'll keep that top working thinner and thinner as I go. And that's where your height comes from. So there's our cylinder, and I'm stopping there. I'm going to finish this and I'm going to use it for a globe-shaped vase. But that's the basic.